Get the latest Impact Podcast right into your inbox each week. Subscribe by entering your email address at impactpodcast.com to make sure you never miss an interview. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigarian, and I'm so honored to have with us today Mary Jacques. She's the Executive Director of Global ESG and Regulatory Compliance at Lenovo. Welcome, Mary, to the Impact Podcast.
Thanks, John. I'm delighted to be joining you today.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. And before we get talking about all the important things that you're working on with your colleagues at Lenovo in sustainability, circularity, ESG, and compliance, I want you to share a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and how you got on this important journey that you're on.
All right. Well, I have spent most of my life in North Carolina, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but I did go to school in the Triangle area. It's very polarizing, but I went to school at Duke and managed to start. I'm not saying that during basketball season, so that would be okay. But I managed to start my career in North Carolina at IBM, and I've been very lucky to have spent my entire career focused on sustainability. Or when I started, it was really focused on environmental, but it evolved into more of a sustainability scope. And then more recently, we've really couched it as ESG. But I've been really lucky to be able to do what I wanted to do, wake up every day excited to go to work, and to do it at some really progressive and interesting technology-focused organizations. So starting at IBM, I went and spent several years at MIT in a staff role. And then I'm embarrassed to admit this, but almost 20 years ago, I joined Lenovo and have been there ever since.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, talk a little bit about your time at Duke. What did you study at Duke?
So I did an undergrad degree in environmental science and then a master's in environmental management. So really I kind of have known for a long time that this was something that I wanted to do and was able to create a career out of it after my academic experience.
You know, little known secret is we have a facility in Baden, North Carolina. Now, before we opened that facility, I had never been to North Carolina. My wife and I went down there for the first time for both of us when we were opening that back in 2011, and we fell in love with North Carolina. It's a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous state. It's one of the gems of the United States. Did you fall in love with the environment as a child growing up because of the beauty of the outdoors in North Carolina, or is it somebody else or some person or thing that gave you inspiration along the way in your childhood?
Well, thank you for complimenting North Carolina. Yeah. I agree. It's a great place to live, and it's a great place for Lenovo to have a presence. I think for me, it truly was just experiencing nature, whether it's in North Carolina or elsewhere. And even today, I just love, being outside, biking, hiking. I have a border collie that enjoys hiking as well. So I think I find inspiration in the natural world, certainly.
So when you started Lenovo, what was your position when you first entered Lenovo?
Okay, so that's a great question. And it's something that I've been thinking about because sometimes I get asked, gosh, you've been doing the same thing for so long and at the same organization. Isn't it boring? Does it get stale? And no, the short answer is no. And one reason is because I have been able to grow. So starting as an individual contributor and moving into management and then eventually into the executive ranks, I've been able to expand my experiences and build my skills at this organization. But I think beyond that, one of the things that maybe some people don't realize is just how much the field of sustainability and ESG has changed over the years and
Right.
how much it has expanded. And so when I look back, almost 20 years ago, we were just starting to measure our scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions. And we were putting together all these frameworks. And I think at that time, there was probably the greenhouse gas reporting protocol, but a lot of stuff we were kind of starting it from scratch and we were building it out across the organizations and across, our industry and other industries as at the same time. And then you fast forward a few years and you start thinking about things like scope 3 emissions. And oh my gosh, how do we get our arms around all of the value chain? And we had the experience of setting science-based targets back in 2017 that included our scope 3 targets. But it's one thing to set the targets, then you actually have to start to make sure you're measuring and reducing it. And so fast forward to 2023, we had our science-based targets validated to the net zero standard, which is yet another, milestone that we achieved. But at each point in time, just using this one example, I, in my own career, was able to touch upon all different parts of the company. So starting from things like really focused on our own operations and working with our real estate and our manufacturing teams to starting to really think more about how do we engage our suppliers? How do we incentivize them to come along with us on this journey? And then most recently, how do we create meaningful partnerships with our customers? Because our use of sold products is one of our big emissions categories. And so it needs to be a partnership across all parts of our value chain. So it's a long answer to your question, but I think just the evolution of how expansively we think about sustainability has really changed in the past couple of decades.
Yeah, it has. And as you said, 20 years ago, it sounds long, but it's really short.
Yes.
And, it's really short. And it was before, that was before we were even talking about the massive generational shift from the linear to circular economy. That wasn't being talked about then. And there was very, very few, if any, chief sustainability officers in 2005. And it was actually before Inconvenient Truth came out. So, just level set everybody. Let's just say this, you're a sustainability OG. That's how
I agree.
That's how short and long it was. So, So talk about your role today. You and I know sustainability can be read very narrowly and broadly. And as you said, the role of sustainability and has evolved. And like you said, we went from scope 1 and 2 now to scope 3. Now to talk about circularity. Now the issue of compliance and compliance not only here in North Carolina, United States, but compliance around the world. You run a worldwide brand. And just for our listeners and viewers to understand, Lenovo is a massive company and, over 56 billion in revenue, over 69,000 employees in over 60 countries. And how many markets are you in right now?
180 markets. So we're truly global.
Truly global. So how talk about your role today compared to 20 years ago, and how do you set priorities for yourself and for your team so things get done and there's a real path forward?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And the way I like to frame it is that my organization, I'm really lucky, genuinely. I'm so lucky to have the group of people that I have working for Lenovo and working in my organization at the corporate level to sort of think about what are the commitments and goals that we need to set all across the company in order for us to actually be addressing our most meaningful impacts? So going back to the concept of materiality, are we chasing what really is important for us, where we can have an impact, where we can meet our customers' expectations, where investors expect us to go? But we're doing that at the corporate level. And what's really important is that we have support from across all the different parts of our business. And Lenovo, as you said, is a really big company. We have a lot of different operations around the world. We have a large manufacturing footprint. But beyond that, we also have customers all over the world. We have suppliers all over the world supporting our manufacturing. And so we rely upon a network of different teams across the company. And that's something that's really evolved in the last 20 years, where we now have teams certainly within our development organizations, groups that are working on developing our products to be more energy efficient, to think about and reduce the product carbon footprint, but also, to your point, to think about how they support a more circular economy. And I can go into more details on that.
Sure.
So we're thinking about that from a hardware perspective, but then we also have a services side of our business. And so how are we providing services that we can bundle with the products that we're selling that help our customers across the whole life cycle? So whether it's things like having more informed discussions at the time of sale so that customers can really understand what the impact is of the different decisions they make when they buy products.
Right.
That could include things like, how do they get it delivered? Do they want a low carbon transport option for delivery of their product? All the way to the end of life, where someone might be concerned about, how do we want to buy all these products from you, but we've got all these legacy products. How do we, and this is probably near and dear to you, how do we responsibly, and not just from a security standpoint, but also from an environmental standpoint, how do we responsibly manage the end of life equipment? So we work with our services organization on that. But, really, all of our progress requires partnership from these groups in development, these groups in the services organizations, and certainly supply chain has taken a bigger and bigger role as we've been thinking about our impact and where we can lead by example. It doesn't end at our factory gates. Our impact really extends into the supply chain. And so we have really great teams that have been expanding over the past several years within our supply chain organization to help partner with our suppliers and promote things like the science-based targets approach, CDP disclosures. RBA is something that we subscribe to at Lenovo and we promote for our suppliers. So there's really all this activity going on across the company. So my team at the corporate level is helping kind of coordinate and set the strategy and the long-term KPIs, but really there are many, many groups across the company that are helping actually do the work to get the results.
I love it. And you produce an annual impact or sustainability report that shows all the progress that you're making?
We sure do. Yeah, that's something that my team does in conjunction with many, many people around the company. And I am reminded every year how complex an operation it is. We're in the middle of it right now. We'll release it in June. And it's really one of those things that takes the whole company to make sure that we can get it done and get it done on time.
It's really so true. It's so interesting. And that lives up on your website, techtoday.lenovo.com. That lives in perpetuity.
You can find it there and in investor.lenovo.com as well. Yep.
Perfect. And that will be in our show notes for all our listeners and viewers. If they're vacuuming now or driving their car or walking, they don't have to write it down. It will be there for them to just click on and look at. You brought up the issue. You brought up a real important term, materiality. What's important for Lenovo and Lenovo's mission? How do you create sustainability commitments that are material but also keeps the company moving forward with regards to their mission, but also the missions that you and the goals that you've created with regards to ESG and sustainability and circularity? How do you balance those two interests and continue to create goals that are material, but also really accomplishing great things with regards to sustainability and circularity as well? Yeah,
and that I think it brings me to a thought that I've had many times over the years, but as I was thinking about our conversation today, I think it's so important for organizations to understand where they really can have an impact. So things like doing a materiality assessment for your ESG report, whether it's a double materiality assessment that a lot of us are starting to do, or in the past, a single materiality assessment. I think really going through the exercise of looking at what's actually important for your organization, for your critical stakeholders is really key, because otherwise it's easy to chase stuff that is in the end isn't going to have a whole lot of meaning.
Right.
And so there's a lot of science and there's a lot of technical knowledge that has to go into understanding where your impact really is. And I think one of the things that I'm proudest of at Lenovo is that we've really tried to take a very credible, standards-based approach and base our commitments on science. And so we have aligned to international programs like the Science-Based Targets Initiative, setting our net zero standard, our net zero targets that were validated to their standard, and even things like disclosures to CDP or with reference to GRI and some of those standards. I think it's really critical that we're measuring ourselves in a way that helps our customers and our investors make good comparisons and really be able to understand the data. And so I'm proud of the fact that we've taken an approach that's based in science, that aligns to these international standards. And it's actually helped us quite a bit too, because then we can go out to customers, and we have many customers that have very high goals for themselves, and they have high expectations for their partners. And so when we can go to them and say, we're aligned, we see that you have very strong climate commitments or circular economy commitments, whatever they are, we're aligned to these internationally recognized standards and disclosure frameworks. It helps us really shorten the conversation. And so you have that SBTI seal of approval, the validation. Okay, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. You don't have to have this big conversation about, well, you say this, we say this. I think it kind of means the same thing.
Right.
So I think that's an approach that's been really helpful for us to be able to make sure we're meeting our customers' expectations. And it's really easy for our sales teams to be able to say, here, we have this validation. You don't have to be an expert to have a big discussion about it.
Nor do we need to sit and have a long debate about it either.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Like you said, 20 years ago, it was about scope 1 and 2, and it was sort of companies would white knuckle it on their own, if there's, for lack of better terminology. But now, as you brought up, it's all about partners, collaboration.
Yes.
And it's much bigger. It's scope 1, 2, and 3, and it's up and down the chain. And it's, like you said, it's creating your own standards and then holding your upstream and your downstream to those similar standards. Can you give a couple of good examples that you're really proud of good and great collaborations that make a difference? Because people, what I continually find is that people think they have to do it alone, and really it's the partnerships and the collaborations that get you further, faster, and actually make more impact.
Well, there are a lot of different collaborations that I'm excited to talk about. And I think your point about collaboration being so important is so true. So even just thinking about our own emissions, or Lenovo's overall emissions footprint, our own emissions are less than 1%. So the vast majority of our emissions are within our value chain, whether it's our procurement suppliers or the use of our products after we've sold them to customers. And so for us to actually move the needle and meet our commitments, we have to collaborate. And so what we've been focused on the supplier side is really helping bring up suppliers who maybe are smaller and don't have as many resources, and help expose them to some of the different tools and programs that we've used along in our journey of growing from a novice to a somewhat more experienced actor in terms of setting and meeting climate goals. So things like bringing our suppliers along in the CDP process, or encouraging them to respond to CDP or join the Science-Based Targets Initiative validation process. Those are things we've done with our suppliers. But more recently, what we've tried to do is give some of our smaller suppliers access to purchasing renewable energy as part of a bundling of volumes that they might otherwise not have enough volume themselves to be able to get access to good renewable energy contracts. So we've been doing that for our own facilities and for nearby suppliers recently, and I think that's been successful. And then on the customer side, that's an interesting thing too, because we know many of our customers are really sophisticated in this area, and we have an opportunity to learn from them. So we have started a series of dialogues through what we call the Lenovo 360 Circle, and it's actually being driven by our sales organization. And it's a partnership where we bring together customers and business partners to try to set common goals and to bring in experts to help educate and share expertise from within the group. But I think the idea of having common goals and speaking a common language is really important, because that way we're spending our energy on making progress instead of sort of negotiating where we want to go. And so I think those two collaborations, those two aspects of collaboration have been really important to us.
Mary, how do you handle, it's like you said, you're in over 180 markets, 60 countries, 69,000 employees. This is a huge venture, huge company that you're sitting in a very important role for. Talk a little bit about in your position, working on circularity and sustainability across continents around the world, where there's no harmonization yet of the rules and regulations. And so how do you walk that delicate high wired, and get across the wire without falling off when you're managing so many, a patchwork quilt of regulations all across the planet right now?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting too, because sometimes some of this stuff is happening, like the whole journey from a linear to a circular economy. We were doing that already before, before we were talking about it in terms of circularity or being in response to certain regulations. We were doing it because we thought it made sense, or we thought it was solving another problem. So a great example of that, we always think about circular design. So when we're designing the product, what decisions are we making to support longer product life, or to get recycled content that we're using in our products? And I think we were doing that, of course, because we had sustainability goals and we thought it was a good sustainability feature. But when it comes to longer product life, our customers want the products to last longer. They want to be able to use them without having to send them back to a service depot to get fixed. And so that was something that has been in our DNA for years, to build quality products, to facilitate repair so that the products can be used longer. And so, yes, there's a circular aspect to it, but it's something we've done for a long time. And the same thing with recycled materials. We have supported the recycling of our products all around the world in different ways for many, many years. And one of the things that we saw from our recycling partners was that end-of-life plastics was just a kind of problematic waste stream. What do they do with that? So our response was, well, let's create a market for it. Let's become a buyer of post-consumer recycled content, closed loop from used IT products, so that this stuff actually has value. And so, we're doing that to help solve a problem with our suppliers and to kind of work together on that. But I want to jump back to the circularity example, because I think sometimes these things seem like they have to be addressed with really high-tech solutions. And sometimes there are high-tech solutions to it, but sometimes it's really low-tech. And so with circularity, we've always had a lot of communications that we put out there for how to repair our products. But within the past 2 years, we've really put a more enhanced focus on, let's make sure we have really good repair videos. Let's make sure we have really good repair information, so that not just the experts at the service centers, but maybe people who want to do this at home can do it themselves. And so kind of low tech, but we've seen a huge uptick in the number of hits we're getting to these service sites. And I think that is good, not just from a circularity perspective, but just in general from a customer satisfaction perspective.
100%.
Low tech.
Yeah. Well, it's low tech, but you're actually using technology for what it was created for, to democratize information. And so
exactly.
That's wonderful.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, when you think about high tech, same scenario when we're thinking about keeping products in service longer, we're using AI and machine learning within our refurbishment operations to enhance what humans can do. And so in the past, when something was coming back to our service centers, ultimately you were using some machines, but it comes down to people looking at a system, diagnosing it, and doing the repair. And so adding in this layer of AI intelligence to be able to look at something that's coming back and determine exactly what has, what's broken
Yeah,
and what
right,
needs to be fixed.
right.
That's been great for a number of reasons. So one, it really pinpoints exactly what component on the board needs to be fixed. So you're not just replacing the whole board and then scrapping the old board. You're just fixing the component. There should be cost savings related to that, but it's also faster. We've gotten or improved the number of systems that we can refurbish by more than 2x per hour. So that's great too. So that's a high tech example. And then, the low tech example is just getting the information out there.
I love it. So you actually beat me to the question, because I always love to know how people in your position are leveraging AI and robotics to improve and to further their mission and further their goals. But now let's look at the other side of AI. We woke up today, and on one of the headlines in the business news was Google and Amazon came out and they said that there's no slowdown. In fact, there's probably an acceleration of the need for more data centers due to the explosion of AI. And so everyone knows Lenovo. It's an amazing, iconic brand, but we know it for the PCs that you create and the hardware. But you have a huge services division. Talk a little bit about the AI explosion and the explosion of your services division with regards to data centers and data controls.
Yes, no, it's a question that's top of mind for us. And I think we do have a very large data center infrastructure business. So we provide servers that help power these data centers that are in the news all the time.
Right.
And what some people may not know is that data centers, one of the reasons why they use so much energy is that you have to cool the servers. And typically that's done by air conditioning the air, which is typically done through evaporation. So there's a water element, losing water to air condition air. And then you basically are air conditioning the whole data center and blowing the cold air across the servers. The fans that are doing that use energy too. So what we have is a technology where we can cool servers using warm water. So it's called our Neptune liquid cooling technology. And this is great because you no longer have to air condition the whole building. You actually are just using warm water in a closed loop. So it's not like there's no water touching the components, but in a closed loop, going over those parts of the server that are producing heat and pulling that heat off. And it allows our servers to be cooled with 40% less energy than you would with fans. That's great. From an environmental standpoint, you use less energy, but from a data center standpoint, it's got two benefits. One, lower energy costs, but two, you can do more with the energy that you have available. And that is a concern. Are we going to have enough energy to power these data centers? So being able to reduce the energy consumption by 40% through this technology is a big deal. So I'm excited about it. And in terms of services, we are thinking about how we can leverage AI within our own manufacturing operations to improve our own efficiency. And so there's also, and then ultimately sell this knowledge to our customers. But there's all sorts of stuff happening in terms of forecasting and being able to make sure you've got the right parts where you need them, not too many parts, in order to be able to build products close to your customers and deliver them close to your customers. So that also cuts your CO2 from transport footprint. In addition to that, we're using digitization and Internet of Things within our own operations to have hundreds of thousands of sensors in a single factory that are monitoring energy use, water use, identifying areas where water can be reclaimed, identifying areas where heat can be reclaimed. And we've had really good success with that. And so building upon that and being able to sell this expertise and help our customers leverage the power of AI and digitization to improve their operations, I think there's huge opportunity there.
So, Mary, you've been in this business. You're, like I said earlier, I said with absolute, it was a compliment and with warmth and with honor. You're a sustainability OG doing this. You studied this in college, you got a master's degree in this in college, and then you've been doing this as a lifetime career. What challenges what eggs are out there for you to crack and that are become your Rubik's Cube that you're trying to figure out and do and get better at?
So I think one of the things that I'm constantly telling my team is that sustainability is really, at its core, it's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And so we have to be thinking long term. I mean, there are very few other aspects of business where you set goals for 2050. So this is a long term commitment that we're making. And so while there are different challenges that we're facing, whether it's changes in our product portfolio, changes to where you make the products, that stuff comes and goes. But really, what's core is that we've set these goals, whether it's climate related or circular economy related, because they reflect our values and they reflect what we think is really important to us as a company. Helps us meet our customers' expectations. It helps us manage risk. It helps us thrive and survive. And so I think that's one of the challenges, is just kind of navigating the day-to-day, year-to-year stuff that's happening and keeping your eye on the long-term commitments that you've made, even when the spotlight's not on you. So there's a lot of splash, when you first set the targets, and then there's a whole lot of work that you have to do to actually get there. So I think that's one of the challenges. But I will say that I am genuinely excited about all of the opportunity that, the world is changing really quickly right now in some really exciting ways. And so, I hate to go back to AI again, but I think that there's a lot of coverage right now of AI in data centers and AI in energy use. But genuinely, I think there is so much opportunity for us to leverage AI and digitization to really make better decisions, make better informed decisions about what we're doing, whether it's these huge conceptual things like, how do you design cities? How do you design transportation routes? Or how do you run your factory to be more efficient? How do you evaluate a product when it comes back, or help have more informed discussions with your customers? There's so much data and there's so much opportunity for us to sort through that data and do a better job of really understanding where our impact is and putting our focus in the right spots. So that's one thing. That's not a challenge. I'm not answering your question. I'm excited about that.
Right.
But the other thing is the people. I'm super excited about, I have the great privilege of having a lot of people who have started their career in sustainability. There are a lot of people who are getting advanced degrees in particular aspects. When I started, there weren't any PhDs in climate science or circular economy.
Right.
Now there are. And so there are people who are devoting their education to this and joining organizations because they really want to make a difference. And they're really smart. They're way smarter than me, and I learn from them every day. But even beyond the people that I have working for me, I just see the excitement across our organization, across, my friend group and their kids. Everybody is really passionate about making an impact, having purpose in their life, having purpose in their career. And I see that at the company. We have people working in all parts of the company who are coming up with ideas, and they're thinking about it in terms of sustainability. Like, hey, wouldn't this be cool? And a lot of it is really good stuff that our team sitting in our little box is never going to think of. So I think having this enthusiasm, whether it's the next generation or generations that are already there but are now thinking with a sustainability mindset, it's really inspiring. And so I can't wait to see where they take us.
It's really cool to see in the short 20 years how sustainability has become a great recruiting and retention tool now at your company, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, people want to work for a company that aligns to their values. And so I'm pleased that I think we've been able to attract some really great talent because of those values.
Talk a little bit about, since you've been doing this so long, I have to ask you this question. And I love what you just said about looking forward, because what some of the common themes in the last 6 months in my interviews have been exactly what you said today. Materiality is what's on everyone's mind. Impact officers, sustainability officers, ESG officers, that's what everyone's thinking about now more than ever before, focusing on materiality. But one of our chief sustainability officers who I recently had on the show also said, basically what you're doing where you sit is you're a futurist. Just like you just said, you're really a futurist. You're thinking about the future all the time and what you're doing and how it affects the future and what the future is going to throw at you, so you're better ready to handle it. So I think that's so on point. But talk a little bit about your journey now. Where are we in our sustainability journey? Like, you and I know there's no finish line when it comes to sustainability. But if sustainability is a baseball game, and to go back about 20 years, because you were pretty much at the beginning of this whole thing, Are we in the bottom of the first or the top of the fifth? Where are we, Mary, now in this whole journey? That's only seems like it's accelerating right now.
I think we're still very early stages. I mean, I think that, I've been doing it for 20 years, but I think that the volume of information and knowledge that we have about the issues that we're trying to address is just unlike anything we had. Today, we have so much more information than we ever did before. And so I think what it's going to allow us to do, when I think about the all the data that goes into evaluating whether it's circular issues or climate issues, there's just so much data, and being able to sort through that and make better decisions. We're just at the early days of really being able to understand where the levers are that we can move. I mean, I think conceptually we've known we got to address the supply chain and energy consumption, but being able to really start to fine tune it, I think there's huge opportunity right now. And I think we're at the early stages.
Yeah, I would say you're right. Mary, I get the privilege of having this podcast and interviewing really great people like you that are making the world a better place. But who inspires and what inspires you now? You've been doing this for so long. Do you look at other OEMs and sustainability officers at other OEMs in your industry? Do you look outside of the industry? Where is your inspiration coming from? And how do you stay so excited and motivated all the time?
So I think, certainly there are other companies that I think are doing great things, whether it's customers that we work with, and we're constantly learning from them. I'm really lucky that we have very sophisticated customers that we learn from each other. But I think genuinely, I am inspired by the people that are joining this profession and the ideas and the rigor that they're bringing to this profession is really, really impressive. The fact that people have devoted their academic and professional careers to very specific segments of this. There is not a day that goes by that I don't learn from, whether it's someone on my team or someone that is working at another organization, but people that are bringing this new enthusiasm, this new knowledge into the field. That's what inspires me.
I love it. Well, Mary, thank you so much for spending about an hour with us today. You're always welcome back. We know there's going to be more great news for you to share with our audience in the future. So we're going to have you back on the Impact Podcast to share their continued journey at Lenovo that you and your colleagues are on in sustainability, ESG, circularity, and also AI. That's, like you said, that's going to be fun to talk about more in the future. For our listeners and viewers to find Mary and all her colleagues and all the important work and impactful work they're doing at Lenovo, please go to techtoday.lenovo.com. That will be in our show notes. Mary, not more important than spending an hour with us today, thank you for not only that, but thank you more importantly for making the world a better place. It's people like you that we need more of, and all the impact that you make on a regular basis that you made for 20 years. I'm just honored to have you on with us today. Thank you for all you do. We're really grateful.
Thank you, John, so much. This has been a true delight. Thanks so much.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.